We have distinguished guest, the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, Steve Feld, will lead us this evening. Steve?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public announcements. I have one, and that is, well, I really have two, if I can find my other sheet of paper. There are fires going off all over the town and the state and the Beeline Highway and I-17, and it seems like everywhere else. We had a couple, the ones in town are really concerning. I think it demonstrated the wisdom of putting the fire department in, because it's such a relief to see 20 units putting those fires out quickly, ones that in the past would have grown a lot faster and gone a lot further and perhaps gotten a few houses. So we're seeing the protection of life and protection of property, the wisdom of having a fire department with the capabilities that we have. What's really concerning about that is the human causes. Taken a look at, and we did make some code changes after the 2020 fires, but I've asked the town manager, the town attorney, to take a look at strengthening both the town codes and also looking at the Arizona criminal codes and restitution for causing fires. I think we have to have some kind of way to increase the awareness and the incentives for people to not start these fires through negligence, and most of them are start through negligence. Couple of items from the legislature. HB 2720 accessory dwelling unit requirements was signed. The League of Arizona Cities and Towns opposed that. This measure requires municipalities with a population of 75,000 or more to allow for the construction of accessory dwelling units or casitas on any single-family residential lot, and restricts the regulation of such ADUs. It's very fortunate tonight we have our first report on short-term rentals. The new code that we passed it went into effect last November, if I recall correctly. That's another one that is starting to take the zoning rights away from cities and put it with somewhere else, or just restricting the ability to control zoning. Another one was the HB 2721 municipal zoning middle housing requires cities and towns with a population of 75,000 or more to allow for the construction of middle housing types, townhomes and multiplex developments on all lots zoned for single-family residential use within a mile of the city or town central business district, and at least 20% of any new development of 10 acres or more in size. So the grandiose bill of last year that was vetoed by the governor is now coming back in little pieces that once again takes zoning ability away from cities and towns, and really is targeted towards more dense zoning. And if you look down Cave Creek Road, you'll be able to see Phoenix coming this way. I'm glad to also see that they established for regulation of backyard fowl. Does council have any other announcements they'd like to make? Okay. Call to the public.
Evelyn Johnson. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I just wanted to give a quick report and let you know that the museum is officially closed for the season on Friday to 51 visitors to the museum on Friday. It was a busy day. We had a very successful ice cream social and it was an awful lot of fun to see everybody having fun. I have hot off the presses your annual reports, if I may approach.
Yes, you may.
As you look at our visitor counts, know that we are your little mini concierge as well. We direct people to whatever's in the community that they want, like where to eat, where to shop, where to find household dressings and pretty things that make all of our houses homes. So we enjoy being able to tell the history and give voice to our history and our historians, but we also are a mini concierge. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. You're one of the signature locations in town. Thank you for all your hard work.
Bruce Arlen.
Good evening.
Hey, Bruce.
I wasn't planning on speaking, but when I heard Mayor Morris say, and I agree with this very much, regarding the zoning, and you just said, I think this is the exact quote, I wrote it down, and Phoenix is coming this way. And of course, I agree completely. But to pivot to dark sky and protecting Cave Creek regarding the light pollution from Phoenix coming this way, I hope that we can apply the same ethical or ethic, the thought of that. And we turned in the, as you just did, some code revisional suggestions regarding fire. We turned in, as a reminder, on March 6th, a complete revisional rewrite of our lighting ordinances. Now, I haven't heard anything yet, any communication since then. I know the manager has it on his desk and maybe it's gone further, but no communications. And so I ask you to expedite as quickly as possible the review, get it back to us. Let's do the committee that was pledged that was going to happen, or some sort of review, so we could upgrade our lighting ordinances and move forward. Thank you.
Bruce.
No additional speakers.
Okay, we're going to have the town manager report next.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, Bruce, you weren't supposed to speak before I spoke. I was asked by a council member actually to give an update on the dark skies, so he kind of took my thunder away from me. Basically, as Mr. Arlen mentioned, the town staff does have the draft of the proposed lighting ordinances that the Dark Sky organization provided to the council a couple months ago. Right now, where we are, the status is that the staff is still in the process of reviewing those as it relates to our current lighting ordinances, and to see what might be some possible changes to make. The next step after that is to complete that and then meet with the International Dark Skies staff to ask specific questions that the staff may have regarding the draft ordinances. Before the updated ordinances would come back to council for its review and consideration, the next step then would involve the Planning Commission to be involved in reviewing and issuing its recommendations to council. So when I initially mentioned this to Bruce, I told him that where I worked previously, it was almost about a year process. I don't think it'll take quite so long here, because I do think our ordinances are a little bit more in tune for dark skies. So it could be as maybe as long as 6 to 9 months. So, but I just wanted to let the council know I was planning on doing this tonight at the request of a council member, and I just want to let the public know that that's where we are right now. The other thing I wanted to let the council know is a couple of weeks ago, the inaugural meeting of the Morningstar Trail Task Force took place, and it was a very productive meeting. The task force elected their chair and vice chair. And at the request of, I believe it was Councilmember Rhodes at the last council meeting, the question was, can we have some sort of a virtual type meeting? And we were able to do a virtual meeting through Zoom for call-in so that the people that are members who cannot be there in person can still participate virtually, at least through an audio format. And then the public can still listen in anywhere that they may be in the world. They could do that. So meeting went really well. They set their schedule for the project, and so that's where we are with that. And then just as I was walking in, the vice mayor brought up a really good point, and that is on June 24th, we're having our public information session on the ballot items. I wanted to bring it up. I wasn't planning on doing it tonight, but I started thinking it doesn't hurt to get the word out. So this information is on our website, and we are promoting this through our social media. This has to do with the ballot items that are on the ballot. That includes the home rule option, which is the expenditure limitation that is imposed on cities and towns here in Arizona, but also the 4-year proposed terms, and then how that works. And so again, this is public information, so we will not be advocating one way or the other. It's just providing the public information. And of course, if council members wish to speak and give their opinions on these items, they may do that. But really the purpose of this is to get the public informed about what is going to be on the ballot, which they should be receiving if they receive early ballots sometime. Is it about the week after that? We think like the end of June is when those will be sent out, the early ballot.
July.
It's the first week in July. So this is about a week before that will happen. That's all I have, Mayor and Council, for my report tonight.
Thank you, Grady. Next,
Could we have the dates of those? You mentioned 2 meetings.
Yes, so we're talking about the public information meeting.
Yes.
Yes, that is June 24th, starts at 5 p.m. and it'll be held in this room here.
And the task force?
Task force, so I don't have all the schedule in front of me, but they do not come back to me until July. We had some conflict issues between the staff and myself. So, but they're intending to wrap this up by the end of September.
okay, well, next on the agenda, we have a very distinguished group in town. The major roads, light rails, freeways, you name it in town is, and the planning agency for Maricopa County, parts of Pinell County, is the Maricopa County Association of Governments, and we have the executive director and key staff members to present to us on 479. And Grady's going to introduce them individually.
Thank you, Mayor. We're very pleased to have Executive Director Ed Zucker. You'll recall Ed used to be the city manager of Phoenix, so MAG was very fortunate to get him as the executive director. Also sitting next to him is Chief Transportation Officer John Bullen. And in the audience, if she could just raise her hand at least, is Audra Coaster Thomas. She's the Chief of Staff. Also a resident of Fountain Hills. I've got to know her over the years and coming into presentations on MAG matters for our council. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Zucker, who has some introductory remarks before he turns it over to Mr. Bullen.
Thank you. One more.
There we go. Okay, got it. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council for having us here this evening to talk to you a little bit about a very important issue coming before the voters of Maricopa County. As Mayor Morris noted, the Maricopa Association of Governments is the regional planning agency, and I'll talk just a bit about that. So I think we can go to the slide, John. Among the things that we do planning for here are transportation. As Grady mentioned, we're not here to advocate a way for anyone to vote, but to give information about what is going to be on the ballot, what the question is at issue. And it is continuing a long history of voter decisions. Back in 1985, which John will talk about, was the first vote in Maricopa County for a 1/2-cent sales tax to support transportation, the freeway system at that point. Again, in 2004, 20 years later, a second vote was held, and passed by the voters of Maricopa County. And now, 20 years after 2004, we're back for, again, for a decision before the voters of Maricopa County for this proposition. It has kind of Mayor and I were talking beforehand, the numbers kind of nondescript, 479, Proposition 479 on the ballot is its name, but it has a very definite big impact that we'll talk to you a bit about. But first, the Maricopa Association of Governments is a council of all 32 governments in the Maricopa County and parts of Pinal County region. And that is 27 cities and towns, 2 counties, Maricopa and Pinal, and 3 native nations, Salt River, Pima, Maricopa, Gila River Indian Community, and Fort McDowell, Yavapai. So those are the 32 members. Mayor Morris, as the highest ranking elected official from your town, represents you on that board. It is 1 community, 1 vote. So Mayor Morris sits at a table with 31 others, and they all equally come to agreement on issues that are of importance. And so the Maricopa Association of Governments is an agency that deals, I say, with problems without borders. But our mission is we serve our members, we strengthen regional transportation, we solve regional problems, and the regional problems that we are charged with are air quality, transportation, human services, water quality, and I'm forgetting one, homelessness and human services. I think I said that one. And then we also support local decision-making by providing data that cuts across the entire region for our members and for agencies. But transportation is probably our biggest, it is our biggest mission that takes the most of our time and attention as an agency. We are the ones who ensure that the federal government's funding comes to the region and then is spent to facilitate the transportation. But it's also the agency where this plan happens for this 1/2-cent sales tax. This is not a thing that happens in big cities all across the country. This is fairly unique to our region, that we have a dedicated 1/2-cent sales tax locally to fund freeways and transportation. And it's simply because the gas tax in the state of Arizona cannot keep up with the demands and the growth. And John will kind of give you a vivid illustration of that starting off with this map. But I do want to thank Mayor Morris for inviting us here, for your participation on the regional council every month. I know it's a commitment to come down to Phoenix as often as you do, and we really appreciate that. And the voice of Cave Creek is always well represented through Mayor Morris and through Grady on the management committee. And with that, we'd like to just walk you through what this regional transportation plan is. It was created by the regional leadership here. It was not imposed from above. It was created through a staff effort directed by our elected representatives, listening to the residents about what they want for transportation, which is really the key to the economic success of the region. Everything from TSMC being able to locate where it is because of the freeway network and the arterial network, all the way down to we fund the street sweepers that you see in town to keep your curbs clean and keep the air clean. So we do everything in between for all of our member agencies. So with that, we'd like to tell you a bit more about this regional transportation plan called Proposition 479, and I'll turn it over to our Chief Transportation Officer, John Bullen.
Thank you, Ed. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm thrilled to be here tonight to talk a little bit more about Prop 479. Really want to start by going back in time. And those of you that have been here a while, this map might be familiar to you. And really what it demonstrates is the high capacity transportation network before 1986. So at the time, we had I-17, we had parts of I-10, and we had parts of US 60 in the East Valley. So I-10 didn't even connect at the time. So During that period, Phoenix had just started to see growth. Business leaders, community leaders came together, and they really knew that they needed to put in a transportation framework to build the type of community that they envisioned in the future. However, at the time, they quickly recognized that reliance solely on existing revenues wouldn't be sufficient. So without the dedicated half-cent sales tax, they actually projected it would take more than 60 years to build the Loop 101. So to put that in another way, without this dedicated half-cent sales tax, we still wouldn't have a completed Loop 101, let alone a State Route 51, Loop 202, Loop 303, so on and so forth. In 1985, the first dedicated half-cent sales tax was presented to Maricopa County voters as Proposition 300. That effort was successful, and as I'll show, largely responsible for build out of our initial freeway system. We went forward to the voters again in 2004 through Proposition 400 for 20-year continuation of that sales tax. And with that, we've been able to make significant investments. So here's a map that really shows the impact of Prop 300. So again, if you consider what we had before Proposition 300, with Proposition 300, much of that framework that is synonymous really with transportation in our region was a direct result of those investments. So we were able to fund the Loop 101, State Route 51, State Route 143, finish off the US 60, and State Route 202 in the Southeast Valley. As I had mentioned, that was initial term of 20 years. So that tax started in 1986 and went through 2005, excuse me. In 2004, Maricopa County voters were presented with a 20-year extension. As our region matured, so did the needs for transportation. So rather than just investments in the freeway system, investments were also made to arterial streets as well as transit. And this map really illustrates what we've been able to accomplish with Proposition 400, which is in place through December 31st, 2025. So we've been able to build the Loop 303 in the West Valley. We've been able to build the Loop 202 South Mountain, provide funding for the region's light rail network, widen a number of freeways, build new freeway interchanges, fund millions of miles of bus transit service across the region. And in fact, this funding source is the primary funding source for the federally required ADA service that is provided across the region. So that's transit service for the seniors, disabled, really the most vulnerable in our community. This funding service is the primary funding source. As we talk about transportation, we also know what its impact is on the economy. So here's some numbers for you that really illustrate. We have a fairly sophisticated transportation model at MAG. It's one of the items that we're incredibly proud of. One of the analysis we ran is how many hours does our freeway system save us a year as the traveling public? And here we estimate it's over 100 hours every year. You also look at the jobs that are created. Most of the jobs in our region are within a couple of miles of a high capacity transportation corridor. And then of course, as we're talking transportation, it certainly drives up the value of property along the freeway, and you can just see that driving throughout the valley. Here's another, I think, really telling slide about the impact of investments that we've made since 1985. And those of you that have come from other regions here to our region probably recognize our transportation system is pretty good relative to others. In fact, here are two independent sources. One is Texas A&M Transportation Institute. Another is a company called INRIX that provides a lot of freight data. And both of these charts show our travel time relative to our peers. And what we find is that our travel times are consistently better and consistently more reliable than our peers. Folks spend less time in traffic, and that really gives us a leg up as we're going out and we're trying to recruit the Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing companies of the world to come locate here and provide high quality jobs. In fact, our friends down at GPEC, Greater Phoenix Economic Council, put this map together. and it shows their major business locates between 1990 and 2022. This map speaks for itself. If you look at where those locates are, you look at where they're at relative to freeway networks, there's a direct correlation. So again, the investments that we've made since the mid-1980s continue to pay off. And then finally, from a public perspective, what we've found throughout the entirety of the process, certainly on the front end as we went out and we talked to members of the public, we had focus groups, tried to understand what is meaningful to them. What we have found is consistently very high levels of support for transportation. People support the existing system as in place. They find it easy to get around. They find it easy to spend more time with their families, to get to work. They don't quite know who plans it all, but they appreciate the investments that have been made. So as Ed had mentioned, we are coming up on the tail end of Proposition 400. And so really planning efforts to figure out what the next 20 years look like commenced in 2018. At that time, we went out and we went through 15, 20 years worth of reports, analysis, studies. We went to all of our member agencies and we said, what's important to you? What transportation projects are your priority? We looked at all the public feedback, what we had, and we put that all together in a comprehensive spot. And what we found is that there's a lot of demand for transportation investments here in the region. In fact, when we added it all up, it totaled $90 billion. For context, that's more than 3 times our projected available revenues over the next 20 years. So we knew we had a challenging task ahead of us, trying to get consensus with all 32 of our member agencies whose needs are very diverse. They range, but fortunately, our member agencies have a common goal and understand the importance of transportation and coming up with the best plan. So we spent 3 years going through a robust technical analysis, extensive public engagement process, went out and had a number of different community meetings, a lot of very thoughtful discussion, analysis, weighing of trade-offs, and ultimately it culminated in the summer of 2021 with a unanimous approval of an investment plan to guide the next 20 years worth of investments. I think that's really telling that you had 32 member agencies, all of whom have very diverse interests, come together to agree on a 20-year plan. Might not be perfect. It might not have everything that everybody wants, but it had enough in it to really satisfy the needs of the future. And I'll quickly walk through what some of those elements are. First, when we're talking about the investment plan, we talk about projects. So maps are very familiar to people. If you look back at Prop 300, Prop 400, you'll see maps of what those investments are. And so a good portion of the funding are going to these projects that require lots of capital, lots of advanced planning, lots of thought, lots of coordination. So you see the projects here on the screen. They range from building the system interchange at 303 I-17. If you drive in that area, you're familiar with a lot of the backups that you're starting to see now with all that development coming in, to reconstruction of I-17 itself. That facility is more than 40 years old. You have new interchange improvements like the one at 101 Pima. You have a number of different arterial improvements like Sonoran Desert Drive, which will provide critical access, as well as the construction of new freeways like a State Route 30, also known as an I-10 reliever in the Southwest Valley. So this map really shows all the number of those defined projects over the next 20 years or so. However, in the plan, we have more than just projects. One of the challenges that we were facing as a region is how do we prepare for an uncertain future? How can we respond and react to the needs of our member agencies, to the needs of the community over the next 20 years, not knowing exactly how that's going to play out? And so to accommodate that strategy, we actually set aside funding in what we call programs. And these programs allow us to go out to member agencies every couple of years and solicit new projects from which we can then program that money. And so here's a listing of some of the funding that we have set aside from non-motorized transportation for those improvements that a town much like yours might have in the next 2, 3, 4, 5+ years for people to walk, to get around, to be able to cross the street safely. We also have a dedicated safety funding source to be able to quickly respond and react to transportation safety needs. We have funding for intelligent transportation systems, or ITS, that's traffic signal coordination, as well as funding set aside for roadway widening projects and roadway rehabilitation projects. So again, this is funding set aside. We haven't identified exactly what those projects are, but we'll go through a robust evaluative process. We'll be able to get public feedback, and we'll ultimately be able to identify and program those projects on a periodic basis. This chart on the screen gives a nice financial summary of the investment plan. What we did when we put it together is we put all the different revenues available to the region on the table. So we really focus on the dedicated half-cent sales tax that will total approximately $15 billion over the next 20 years or so. But there's also some federal funding that we get that we included. You can see also the outlay to where that money is going to go. Significant investments in freeways, but also in transit, and then the arterial and regional programs as well, which I'll get into in a little bit more detail here shortly. So what does it mean? With the plan, as we put it together, we did an analysis to figure out what it means at the end of the plan. And what we found is that the investments in transportation will continue to make sure that travel around our region is easy. In fact, I think that one of the key takeaways from this slide to me is that as we look out to 2050, we're projecting that we're going to add 1.7 million more people. We're projecting that we're going to add 900,000 jobs. But even with that additional growth and these transportation investments, the average commute time in our region will still be less than 30 minutes. That's pretty incredible when you think about the size of our region. And in fact, even with all that additional growth and these investments, that's less than the average commute time now of many of our peers, including LA, Chicago, and Houston. So it's really telling what the investment plan will mean from a travel perspective. So Maricopa County is unique in that, well, it is a county-wide sales tax that requires county-wide voter approval. It ultimately requires state legislation to be able to refer it to a ballot. And so after we approved the plan in 2021, we spent the last couple of years down at the legislature seeking legislative approval. Came very close in 2022. Ultimately, that bill was vetoed in the final minutes of the session. But last year, we were able to successfully navigate the legislature and the bill to authorize a vote to continue the dedicated half-cent sales tax was signed by the governor. The Maricopa County Board of Supervisors has since referred that to the ballot. And so you will be seeing that in the November 5th, 2024 general election ballot. One of the questions I get a lot is, what does the ballot language actually look like? Here it is for the screen. I won't go over it in detail, but it's certainly available for any one of your residents that might be interested. But this is what will appear in the November 5th, 2024 ballot. So one of the other questions I get a lot is what happens if Prop 479 does not pass? So unfortunately, this is the part of the presentation that it isn't quite so optimistic because the dedicated half-cent sales tax is such a critically important funding source when we're talking transportation here in the region. So there's a couple of slides that I just want to touch on that really illustrate this point. So when we were working with our friends down at the legislature, trying to seek enabling legislation, one of the story points that we were trying to convey to them is if, as you look at the difference between Prop 400, which is our current dedicated half-cent sales tax, and Prop 479, the largest category of growth, if you will, is in the arterial and regional programs. In other words, there's more funding set aside for arterial and regional programs in Prop 479 than there was in Prop 400. Arterial and regional programs is basically another word for saying these are locally developed and implemented projects. So the local agencies are actually responsible for building these. So why did we see such growth in this particular category? Well, it all relates back to HERF. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with HERF and some of its limitations. I think this chart does a fantastic job of illustrating that. So what this chart shows is the average or the total statewide HERF collections going back to the year 2000 controlled for inflation. So we've taken inflation out, and those are the bars that you see. And then the big green block behind it is the state's population. So essentially what this says is that when you control for inflation, we actually collected less money in the Highway User Revenue Fund in 2021 than we did in the year 2000. Over that same time period, the state's population has grown more than 40%. That has put a huge strain on local agencies, as the HERF was intended to be the primary funding source for roadway improvements. So why are we seeing such pressure on regional funding for roadway improvements? This is why, because this is a critically important funding stream for local roadway improvements. And without it, that'll take away a significant fund source that is currently available to local agencies. On the transit side, transit in our region is funded through a combination of local sources as well as the dedicated half-cent sales tax. So this map shows routes that are at least partially funded by the dedicated half-cent sales tax. So without the dedicated half-cent sales tax, if that goes away after 2025, all of these routes are at risk. So there's a lot of red on the map. These routes provide important access to medical appointments, educational facilities, entertainment, and we'll certainly see a significant impact without the dedicated half-cent sales tax on the transit system. On the freeway side, Maricopa County, again, has been the beneficiary of this funding source. It has allowed us to expand, improve our freeway system to keep up with growth. Unfortunately, without this fund source, we'll be in a position not dissimilar to the rest of the state, where our funds are just going to have to be focused on maintaining our existing infrastructure. In other words, we won't be able to keep up with the forecasted growth, and this will be particularly problematic as you look at all the new development coming in. So this map here illustrates a lot of those Prop 479 freeway projects, and then the yellow highlights indicate areas where we're seeing a lot of commercial activity. And again, you're seeing a lot of commercial activity in very close proximity to where we have those planned improvements. And without this dedicated funding source, we simply won't be able to move forward with those projects. So with that, Mayor, Council, thank you again for having us. We are more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
You have questions from council?
There was one of the maps here that showed some things that I didn't understand. So if you could go back, sorry, it's going to be a ways back. Keep going. There were some dark blue lines on there that keep going back that I just didn't understand. Yes, there. Okay, the blue lines, they're making kind of a cross snippet.
Yep. So the on this map, so the gray lines are the original high capacity transportation system. The green lines are the Prop 300 funded investments. And then the dark blue lines are the Prop 400 funded investments.
So you're going to have some parallel and close to the present.
Correct. So a great example is this Loop 303 extension in Goodyear out in the far West Valley. So that's a project that we have funded for construction later this summer that's being funded out of Prop 400. Most of the rest of it has already been constructed.
And I'm thinking of, okay, you got it, 17 on top, 17, the next one down, and then just below that, there's some blue lines.
I think
Oh,
that's what
those are the light rail
Light rail,
system.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
So thank you for your presentation. It's very informative. I was wondering, you have some stunning predictions for growth in our region. Do you think our current situation with our water supply will have any impact on your predictions?
Mayor, members of the council. So as we were putting our plan together, one of the key components that we put into place were scenario testing, where we tested a variety of scenarios to make sure that our plan investments continued to be resilient. So while we didn't necessarily plan what happens with if there's potential water supply issues or on growth, what it did allow us to do is look at different trigger points, whether that's how many autonomous vehicles are on the road, or for example, if more people tend to telecommute and there's fewer trips to the central core, or people tend to stay closer to home. And so really with the catalog of investments that we ended up with, we found those to be the most resilient. So even if there's potential change in future growth, whether it be due to water issues or anything else, these particular investments rose to the top as the most resilient, if you will, that we need and help support the kind of transportation system that we envision.
Very good, thank you.
Councilmember Bunch.
Okay, this can be an interesting question. Her funds consist of quite a few little buckets, one of which is gas taxes.
Yes.
Do you know if the legislature, you guys work on the legislature to get some money from those 3 times the weight of a normal vehicle that are doing more wear and tear on the roads than those of us that are still using fuel?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, certainly there's been acknowledgement by the legislature of the need, we'll call it, to modernize the Highway User Revenue Fund. There's been a lot of different ideas. I would say that they've fallen short of consensus. And so it's an issue that many of the members are aware of, acknowledge the challenge, though there doesn't appear to be any great, I think, immediate likelihood for any sort of consensus or any sort of solution there. So it's an issue that we continue to talk about. It's a problem we continue to raise. It's a problem that they'll continue to address, but I think there's not a high likelihood in the short term, at least, that they'll be able to come up with consensus there.
Yeah. For those here that might not have followed that, I'm talking about electric vehicles that more wear and tear on the roads with no contribution to maintenance or future growth.
Councilman Bunch, I think you identified an important point that's going to have to be discussed, which is right now the burden of funding our road system falls to a single category of vehicle power, and that's gasoline or diesel. And there's going to have to be an accounting for exactly what you said, which is the wear and tear on the roads doesn't care whether the weight of driving on it is electric powered or gas powered or diesel powered, it's wearing down. And so there's going to have to be a reckoning with that very question.
And the fact that they weigh much more than a standard vehicle. Yeah.
Why is there controversy? Why aren't people recognizing?
I think gas tax, the concept of it was easy. You just, when you go to the pump, you pay your tax. You don't even think about it, right? There's no equivalent way to do that with electricity going into a vehicle that has been very easily or conveniently found. And so there's concerns about how do you determine how much you've used the roads based on what? Is it on a mile? Do you have to talk about how many miles you've traveled, and how do we track your mileage? And so there's individual privacy concerns or liberty concerns about who knows how many miles you're driving, which you don't get into. You show up to the gas pump, you pay your tax, you move on. So it's figuring out how to fairly assess that cost to people's use, because generally gasoline use, to Mr. Bunch's point, gasoline use tracks with how much you're using the road, but we haven't figured out a way to do that with electricity and vehicles.
Except that they charge their vehicles, but some people have home charge.
Right. Right.
Other questions? Councilmember Alderson.
Just a quick question. Do you have any polling showing what the public's current? I mean, you're smiling because you know that a while back it was pretty favorable. Is that being held, do you think?
Yeah, I can speak to this perspective because this is in the public the public realm, there was just a poll published and distributed to local news medias, which I happened to read, which was by Noble Predictive Insights, that Maricopa County residents understand the value of the existing tax to support the transportation system. By over 60 and 70% of people are favorable to the idea of how we are funding our transportation system. So what I have seen in the Republic and elsewhere is reporting of information that the public believes in the system, they've seen the value of the system, and are supportive of continuing the system. Yeah.
Well, you've exhausted all my questions already answered, but one thing I got out of this is and I've written it down here, is fallen short of consensus. What a turn of phrase that is. Congratulations.
Euphemism.
That concludes. We're very happy. We thank you very much for being here, coming all the way out. Audra, thank you for coming. And I think I've learned more here than even in the meetings. Right. This is a wonderful presentation.
Exceptional.
And,
Did you do it yourselves or did you use a consultant to help you?
We've generally been, Mayor, Councilmember or Vice Mayor Royer. We generally put all this information together. We do have a visualization consultant that helps us polish it on the edges, but Mr. Kester Thomas over here is actually the brainchild of a lot of this. So
I was going to say, John's being a little humble here. He and Audra really drove this from a staff perspective, and what you see is largely the result of their hard work with the people who work for them, of course. And Mayor Morris got to see the product of that, and with the regional council move it around. But I really want to commend the two, John and Audra, for the work they've done with our staff.
one of the
Thank
things
you for
I've
recognizing.
noticed is the technical expertise and capability of modeling air pollution. We didn't even get into all the air pollution problems that these things have. And it's just, I'm really confident in the technical abilities of Meg. So congratulations. Thank you very much for coming all
Thank
the
you
way
for
out here.
having us. We really enjoyed
Thank you very much.
visiting. So thank you.
As far as actions, the next one is the council consideration of second reading of ordinance number 2024-03, and ordinance of the mayor and council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, amending the town of Cave Creek zoning ordinance, chapter 12, entitled Site Plans, section 12.2, entitled Procedures, subsection A, by allowing public comment for site plan cases, establishing an effective date, and providing for repeal and severability, and is presented by the senior planner.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. At its previous meeting held on May 20th, 2024, Town Council approved first reading for ordinance 2024-03. Staff is here tonight to present second reading of ordinance number 2024-03, and ordinance amending the zoning ordinance, chapter 12, site plans, section 12.2, procedures, subsection A, item 7, where public comment shall be allowed at planning commission meetings for site plan cases. Approving of second reading of ordinance number 2024-03 would adopt the amendment as presented. Since the second reading is very short, so at this moment, are there any questions for staff or council?
Questions?
Mayor Morris, I have a question or a comment,
Go ahead, Paul.
and this is Paul, by the way. I love this, that we are acknowledging the need for our citizens to be able to share their thoughts with us about any project that comes forward. But here's what worries me just a little bit. That is, these sessions are gonna generate some energy, and I'm wondering if there is a consciousness about supporting staff with dealing with that kind of energy. There are definite trainings about that, and to be able to hear people, to listen to people, acknowledge their words, and help people keep a level head about what they're saying and what they're hearing, I think is really important. And I just want to notice that for staff to say, we're not wanting them into a grinder. We want them to listen to what people have to say and do their good work with that.
Thank you.
If I may, to the council member's point, I had talked to the Development Services Director about having some sort of a preamble that would be read by the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission when the site plan types of reviews come up. So the public really understands what the role is and how this process works, so that it will help, I think, with the understanding with the public that might be there. Plus, it would also be included with some verbiage in the staff reports. So that would be also available for the public to review and read. But I think it's important for that to be verbalized at these planning commission meetings. And then when it comes back before us for the council, for that to also be read. So it's just, I think it's just putting everybody on the same page and understanding their role, their respective roles. And it helps with that respect that I think I'm hearing you say, council member. So I think that is maybe an additional component that is really administrative that we can add. It doesn't need to be part of the ordinance that we have before us tonight.
Thanks.
Other questions? Seeing none, we are ready for a motion. Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you, Dusty. Public comment.
I have no one wishing to speak.
Okay. Just because of that, maybe you want to make the motion.
I will make the motion. Motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 02024-03, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, amending the town of Cave Creek zoning ordinance, chapter 12, entitled Site Plans, section 12.2, entitled Procedures, subsection A, by allowing public comment for site plan cases, establishing an effective date, and providing for appeal and severability.
Second.
Okay, Dusty, you had the motion?
Yeah, I actually preferred the other alternative that we did last time, but I think this is acceptable. And I think it's important that we hear people. 90% of the problem is people not talking to each other. And instead we want to avoid people, pitting one group against another. Let people have their say. Most business owners, from my perspective, they're more than happy to hear what the public comments are, because it's in their vested interest not to annoy their clients or potential clients. So I just think this should be more of a friendly dialogue rather than some, two groups hammering it out. Just my personal opinion.
Councilmember McGuire.
Yeah, we had good discussion. This came about as a result of consideration by the council, and many of us changed the way we felt about it as a result of the quality of the discussion. That's it.
Other comments?
Mayor, you're going to need to call for a roll call, because once again, I'm violently opposed to this because it sets unreasonable expectations for the people, the residents who have questions about something that meets all the ordinances and setbacks. We have no control over when they're in complete compliance. We have no control and no right to make any changes to those site plans. So I think we're just setting the council up, elected officials up for continual disapproval by the residents. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay, I guess my comment is it certainly isn't perfect. It seems like there's an awful lot of money and time and effort and potential miscommunication and heat generated by site plans of which we have very little control that might better be spent improving the code so the site plans reflect what we really want them to be, as long as the legislature permits us to do that. But I'm going to vote for this as the best we have right now, and because it was recommended by the Planning Commission. So I guess according to Mr. Bunch, we'll need a roll call. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Arterton,
Aye.
Councilmember Bunch,
No.
Councilmember Alcamont,
Yes.
Councilmember McGuire,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhodes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Royer,
Yes.
Mayor Morris.
Aye, the motion passes 6-1. There's a change in the agenda. Next one, this will be a public hearing regarding a council discussion and approval of resolution R 2024-06, adopting the fiscal year 2024-2025 expenditure limitation and budget for the town, and providing that this resolution shall be effective from and after its passage and approval according to law. At this point, we are going to recess the regular meeting and open a special public meeting. There is a presentation by staff.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Before we turn it over to staff, I just wanted to remind the council that the council adopted the tentative budget at the last council meeting. Tonight is the final budget adoption that is before you. One of the most important acts that the council takes each year is the adoption of the annual budget. The annual budget is essentially a spending plan. It's providing the funding for the services and programs and capital that we have for the next fiscal year. And so this is it's probably one of the most important activities that this council does, particularly in its fiduciary responsibilities. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mitzi, who will be presenting a much more abbreviated presentation than what you saw the last time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mitzi.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to walk you through the highlights of the fiscal year 2025 final budget. This first slide is a pie chart presentation of our total fiscal year 25 revenues that we have in the 25 budget. The revenues total $57,393,797. This pie chart it reflects the revenues by fund type, with enterprise funds totaling 44% of that revenue, general fund 37% of the revenue, special revenue funds at 14%, and our capital project funds at 5%. The next slide before you is another presentation of the same revenues in table format and reflecting dollar values, with the general fund showing revenues of $21,445,640, special revenue funds of $7,750,103, capital project funds of $2,978,198, and our enterprise funds totaling $25,219,856 for that same total revenues in the fiscal year 25 budget of $57,393,797. Moving forward to the next slide, this slide is a reflection of our fiscal year 25 expenditure budget, which equals the same amount of the $57,393,797, with general fund expenditures totaling $19,738,892. The total of all of our special revenue funds broken down below by special revenue fund type, total $5,991,003, and our enterprise funds totaling $31,663,902 in expenditures, with Cave Creek Water, of course, being the biggest at $14,312,943. Desert Hills Water reflected at $4,545,200, wastewater at $4,917,972, and our WIFA loan funds for fiscal year 25 projected with expenditures of $7,887,787. The next slide is a table format of the total expenditures for the fiscal year 25 budget. It totals the same totals that we just saw on the previous slide. This gives a little more detail for the general fund of expenditures by department, and a note to the side which indicates and shows that these expenditures include both of our operating and our capital expenditures. The next slide before you is a comparison of the town's fiscal year 24 and 25 expenditure budgets by type. The fiscal year 24 expenditures are shown in the blue lines on this slide, and the fiscal year 25 expenditures are shown in the red lines, with the amounts reflected on the left side of the screen and in the millions, and expenditures reflected by type at the bottom, with our personnel costs, contracts and services, commodities, which are non-capital, our capital expenditures, debt service, contingency, and grants. So this graph shows we do have consistency between our budget years, with some slight increases as shown in the red lines, and a couple of decreases by those expenditure types. And our fiscal year 25 general fund capital improvements for the general fund is $7,295,200, which is comprised of the fire station renovation and improvements of $2,899,000. We have street improvement projects totaling $2,493,200 in the fiscal year 25 budget. Some fleet purchases of $725,000, and our Cave Creek Road median enhancements of $500,000. Got the rodeo skybox in there for $500,000, and the town hall chambers redesign of $160,000, and a small portion there for our town copy machines. The next slide is our fiscal year 25 wastewater capital improvements. For the wastewater funds, these total $1,325,000 and are made up of the capital projects that are shown there for you on the screen. Our fiscal year 25 Cave Creek water capital improvements total $16,280,535, of which the Phoenix Interconnect project is making up $13,695,535 of those costs. And our fiscal year 25 Desert Hills water capital improvements for fiscal year 25 total the $932,712, which are made up of the projects shown on this table and part of this slide. And we put in the slide presentation, the cavecreekaz.gov/budget is the website that can be where the town's website, where we can find this year's current budget documents on there, our tentative budget and our capital improvement plan. Forms are already on there, and based on the vote for tonight, the final budget will be posted on there as soon as it's finalized as well. So we are here tonight for adoption of this final budget, and the town manager and staff are requesting council approve the budget for the town of Cave Creek in the amount of $57,393,797 for the fiscal year 25, which will begin this July 1st, 2024. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Mitzi, is the strategic plan included as part of the budget as it has been in the past? Or is it a separate document this time around?
Or is it a separate what? Sorry.
Document, is it separated from the budget?
No, it is included as part of the final budget.
Okay.
Do you want me to tell you what pages those are on?
It's not in our handout tonight.
It's not in the handout, but it was in your council packet.
Okay, very good.
It's a good question, Vice Mayor. It's integrated into it
Yes.
completely. In fact, the current fiscal year's budget also had it as well. But the new budget software that we implemented, that was one of the bright lights of the difficult implementation, as that was able to be included very easily. So good
I've only
question.
found that when I'm searching for it on our website, I can't find it. So we have to make sure that if somebody's just looking for the strategic plan, it can be directed to the budget.
Thank you. I will go back and look at that. I know I have not looked for it on the website since I was a candidate for my job,
Mhm.
but I will go back and see how we can make it a lot more friendlier to
That
try
would
to
be good,
find.
just to make sure.
Other questions? We've seen this a number of times, so. So thank you very much, Mitzi.
Yes.
I'm going to open the public hearing comments. Are there any?
I have no one wishing to speak.
There are no comments. Seeing that, the public hearing comment period is now closed. And I'd ask one of the council members to make a motion as that's on the agenda here, number 2.
I'll do it.
Go ahead, Dusty.
Yeah. I'll make sure I'm reading the right one here.
If you don't, I'll catch you in it.
Council action needed, motion to adopt resolution R 2024-06, a resolution of the mayor and council of the town of Cave Creek adopting the fiscal year 2024-2025 expenditures limitation and budget for the town and providing that this resolution shall be effective from and after its passage and approved according to law.
Second.
So I was one of the ones who complained the loudest last year about the fact that we didn't have the strategic plan, we didn't have transparency across the budget. I think that we've accomplished that mission. I think for the first time, probably in Cave Creek history, we haven't had to go through endless amounts of spreadsheets. Everything's at our fingertips and we can look at it in one spot. So I want to thank both of you ladies for working hard to make this happen. And I think future iterations of this should go much smoother. And like I said last time, I'm not sure that everybody's happy with every piece of the budget, but I will say that we had plenty of discussion on the entirety of the budget. And this is what the council came up with.
Well said.
Other comments? Councilmember Bunch.
Since this is my last one,
Mm.
I'm happy with that. It's interesting to note, while the number may be huge, if you look at the CAFRs over the years or whatever they call them now, we never, ever get anywhere near that total number that we spend. This is, if we don't budget for it, it can't happen if the opportunity arises later on. We're usually, golly, at least 5 to 7% below that, or maybe even more than that. So it's a scary number, but it's not really real.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, and part of the reason that it's so high is because we have to include grants in our revenue, which was, unbelievable to me when I first became a council member. Because we might not get all the grants that we apply for, but yet they are reflected in the budget. However, this year we do have one thing to celebrate, because not only did we get 1, but 2 federal grants. And I just read that we got a $500,000 grant for our smart meter program. Congratulations to Sean on that one. That was huge. So that will really, that's 50% of the total cost of that program. So that was really good news and is included reliably and realistically as part of this budget.
Thank you. Other comments?
I have a comment, Mayor Morris, and that is, when I look at this budget, I can see elements of our general plan in it. I can see clearly elements of our strategic planning in it. And I'm really proud to have been part of that. I think we're working well for the people we represent.
Thank you. Any more comments? My comments, the budget is one of the hardest things to comprehend for somebody from business who lived and died by budgets, because it's an expenditure budget. It's a do not exceed budget. There are always things in here that are placeholders in case something happens, like for grants. But I'd like to put some context on this. And the first thing I look at is, what is the checkbook? And we've got basically $30 million in our checkbook in reserves that we have on hand. We've added to that every year. This is the first year in my memory that we have actually planned on pulling some of that money out to invest in the town, not for ongoing expenses, but for capital expenses. The chief thing being the fire department, the startup, the building, the fire truck. And we've had at least 3 occasions in the last month where that has critically put out a fire in, well, hours. And and I looked down the road from schoolhouse there when the schoolhouse fire, and saw 20 fire units there, putting that out in no time. And we had a fire, the Ocotillo fire was 2 minutes away from our previous fire station, and it burned a good portion of the town down. So I think that is a good expense. The second one is a road catch-up. The roads were underfunded for many, many years, and we're on a 2 or 3 year program to do that. We're pulling money out of the bank to do that. So we get the roads up to snuff, and then get a reassessment, and then start over planning to keep the roads there. But this is a catch-up from deferred maintenance. Want to also point out that in my first contact with the town politics, we were $66 million in debt. We had, I don't know, 60% of the population, something like that. We didn't have a Walmart. We didn't have any of the businesses down there. We had a huge amount of debt, and that debt is down to 16. And we have a Walmart, and we have higher utility fees coming in. We have sales tax revenues coming in. So we can support this budget, and it solves problems that the town has. It's going to be spent wisely, and going forward, we'll probably use debt financing. For example, the water companies have, in addition to these on here, we've got a whole new strategic plan, I'll call it master plan, coming for the water companies, and I'm sure it'll find some things that we ought to spend money on, including we have the Colorado River out there we got to be worried about here pretty quick. So I support this, and I will certainly vote in favor of it. With that, we have public comment. Oh, no, we had our public comment. Okay. With that, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bunch,
Yes.
Councilmember Alcott,
Yes.
Councilmember McGuire,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhodes,
Aye.
Councilmember Algerton,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Royer,
Yes.
Mayor Morris.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Next one here is a council discussion approval of resolution 2024-07, a resolution of the mayor and town council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, adopting the fiscal year 2024-25 Public Safety Personnel Retirement System, PSPRS, pension funding policy, accepting the town's share of assets and liabilities under the PSPRS June 30th, 2023 actuarial valuation report, repealing the prior policy and establishing an effective date, presented by the finance director.
Mayor, Council, I've asked Mitzi Callow to go ahead and give a briefing on this topic. You recall we did this last year, and we're required to do this annually each year. With that, I'll turn it over to Mitzi.
Mayor and council, I prepared a slideshow presentation of that I'd like to run through related to the PSPRS pension funding policy. The town of Cave Creek participates in the Public Safety Personnel Retirement System, otherwise known as PSPRS. Arizona Revised Statute 38-86301 requires town council to annually adopt a pension funding policy for PSPRS to communicate how the town will maintain stability of the town's required contributions, how and when the town's funding requirements will be met, and defines the town's funded ratio target under PSPRS. The town is also required to formally accept the town's share of assets and liabilities based on the PSPRS actuarial report and post the pension funding policy on the town's website. The PSPRS June 30, 2023 actuarial report was prepared by Foster and Foster Actuarials, and it reflects the town's share of assets at $729,781 and the town's accrued liability at $941,255, leaving an unfunded liability of $211,474. And the town with a funded ratio of 77.5%. For fiscal year ending June 30, 2024, the town made an annual required contribution, otherwise known as ARC, payment of $12,266, which was called out in the actuarial report and is currently below the fiscal year 23-24 council set PSPRS funding ratio goal range of being between 90 and 100%. The decrease in the funding ratio from the prior year was due to the town's PSPRS employee entering retirement, otherwise drop, earlier than the actuarial assumption, which caused a greater liability experience to be noted in the June 30th, 2023 actuarial valuation. And the estimated benefit amount was also 6% higher than what the actuarials had estimated in that previous report as well. These two items caused the town's unfunded pension liability to increase and the funded ratio to drop from the 97.7% as of June 30, 22 to the 77.5% that we have reflected in the June 30, 2023 report.
Mitzi,
Yes.
can you, I should have given you a heads up on this, but can you explain how that fund can drop 97% to 77 when the stock market is skyrocketing, interest rates are 5%? I mean, their return on the money should have been greater. It doesn't make sense to me.
So the biggest, my understanding of the biggest part of that drop in that report, the actuarials do their assumptions and they make predictions based on what is expected to happen. And because our PSPRS employee had entered drop, that was earlier than they had anticipated.
What is drop?
It's a entered retirement. So based on the PSPRS, based on those employees that had entered into that program at a certain point in time, they had the ability or have the ability to enter into a drop program where they continue employment with the city or town that they work for, but they're collecting retirement, which gets set aside in a separate account for them, which then gets funded at the end of their drop period.
I don't want to keep us here all night asking
That's
questions
okay.
because I'll just find out about this later.
Okay.
I'm really interested in the actuarial
Report.
and why.
But
this-
the assumption changed. So the actuarials weren't assuming that retirement to be happening so early. And so when that retirement happened, it changed the funding
So
out for
Do we
that.
have an
plan.
employee in that retirement program now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Mayor and Council, you will recall back in our very first budget workshop, we had that $211,000 and we were contemplating and initially had it proposed that we go ahead and just pay that liability off. However, in talking, staff talking to the PSPRS staff, they said that that number actuarially could change and they were recommending that we don't pay for the amount in full because you could actually overpay. And so what we're trying to do is a little bit more prudent. We're suggesting that we do the $75,000 as you'll see it and further in the presentation next fiscal year. We go ahead and evaluate the next actuary assessment and then determine how that has brought down that unfunded liability. Because the individual has 3 years before he's technically no longer an employee of the town. And what happens is when you sign up for DROP, it's a deferred retirement program that the public safety retirement system offers. And so what's happening is that the town and the employee are no longer making normal required contributions to the system. So that's also playing into this as well. So that I believe is part of what you're seeing with the numbers and how they don't mesh up. I believe when the employee chose to do the DROP program, it might have been like 3/4 of the year in a fiscal year, and it didn't get noticed or seen when they did the first actuary study. And so we believe that the number is going to probably not be as high as $211,000 next year, because obviously we're buying it down, but we also don't want to overpay. And with having only one employee, it's possible that that unfunded liability could be paid off, but then we can overpay. And so we think we need to normalize another year, maybe 2, and we'll be where we need to be. But we do think rather than paying the $211,000 at one time, we'd like to see the impact of what staff is recommending, which is $75,000 for next year. It's confusing when you start talking about DROP and such, and these are usually policy questions that councils decide whether or not they want to have, their law enforcement or the firefighters who are qualified to participate in those programs.
Well, we're also in it with Daisy Mountain because they're in it also. So it's bigger than just one when you look at the overall, and the fact that we're going to pay.
And
those
MCSO
fees through
does the
those-
same thing. It's reflected in the rates we pay them
Yeah,
as
so,
well.
so we have, I'd be really interested in seeing if they have an annual report that, if we get one, I'd sure like to see it. Thank you. Sorry, Mitzi, go ahead.
No, that's okay. The next slide that's before you, staff is recommending to council the PSPRS funding ratio goal to stay within the range of the 90 to 100% with the ultimate intent to achieve 100% fully funded status. Since the assets and accrued liabilities of the plan fluctuate year over year, a funding range rather than a set funding percentage goal is both reasonable and prudent. Additionally, since the town does not currently have any active employees in the plan, due care should be taken to hedge against the plan being excessively overfunded. So maintaining a pension between the 90 to 100% approximates fully funded status and is the best way to achieve taxpayer and member intergenerational equity. So based on our current status of the pension plan for fiscal year 2025, staff recommends as an option to achieving that 90% funding status that the town make an additional payment above the annual required contribution of $53,066 to increase the funding status and to continue to monitor and review that funding status over the next several years as the actuarial valuations kind of stabilize out with the town's PSPRS employee now in the DROP retirement status. So the resolution before you tonight is R 2024-07, and if approved by council, staff will use the 75,000 that's currently in the Public Safety Law Enforcement Department budget retirement line item to make the annual required contribution, the ARC payment estimated for fiscal year 2024-2025 to be 21,934, and also make that additional $53,066 payment above the ARC payment to increase the funding status. And then we'll continue to monitor and review that funding status over the next year to see where the valuation for the plan finishes out. And with that, I'm happy to answer any further questions
Any
there
questions?
might be.
Seeing none, there is public comment.
I have no one wishing to speak.
Okay. Tom, did you want to make,
I can do it.
you missed the last motion, so.
This is a motion to approve resolution R 2024-07, a resolution of the mayor and town council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, adopting the fiscal year 2024-25 Public Safety Personnel Retirement System, PSPRS, pension funding policy, accepting the town's share of assets and liabilities under the PSPRS June 30th, 2023 actuarial valuation report, repealing the prior policy and establishing an effective date.
I will second it.
Second.
You're too late.
Yeah.
Mayor Morris had the second on the.
I'm
Sure,
sorry, I
next
didn't,
minute.
I didn't hear you.
Tom?
This is good. We've got to make those adjustments. Keep us on track.
I agree. Other comments from council?
I just thought you were asking for a second. I didn't know you was making one.
Okay, so this is financial. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Elkama,
Yes.
Councilmember McGuire.
Yes.
Councilmember Rhodes,
Aye.
Councilmember Arterton.
Aye.
Councilmember Bunch,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Royer,
Yes.
Mayor Morris.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. So we're on to staff and department reports, presentation of the quarterly utilities report presented by the utilities director.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Sorry, we're off topic or off schedule for you. Usually these are quarter reports. Usually we're sort of in the first four weeks after we're off topic, but I'll be coming back to you probably in the next 5-6 weeks to do the next quarterly update, give you some more information on how our systems are working as Brian's working on getting the presentation up.
Or if the council's okay, this could satisfy both of those.
No.
These are so much fun. I'd hate.
I'm just teasing you, Sean.
My staff put a lot of work into these, so I appreciate that. So. Okay. So we start off by talking about just our water demands and where we're seeing the trends for this upcoming year. Obviously, we're a couple of months behind on this, but we're actually seeing the data is showing that we're trending about the same. Last year was an odd year for us. We did while early in the year, we lost a number of Carefree customers. Our demands picked up, and since it was such a long, hot summer, our demands crept up into the end of October into November. We're not sure how the summer will play out this year, but we anticipate something similar this year with a little bit of a little reprieve from previous peaks. This slide is what we refer to as our cap deliveries. The stacks are where we're sending it to the Cave Creek customers is the orange bar. The Desert Hills tie-ins, that's the water that we use to supplement to the customers out in Desert Hills beyond what they have in well capacity. What we send to Rancho Manana and then the total cap water delivery. So this is something that you're seeing right now is a little bit difference between the gaps or graphs. Because last year, based on the rate model, we actually started charging a 5% treatment and transmission loss to Desert Hills. So that's actually built into this graph now. We do that because that's a delivery to them, and it accounts for some of the treatment and delivery losses that we see in this system. Overall, we're doing fairly well on both systems. So nothing really to report on this one. And Desert Hills itself, revenue versus non-revenue water, similar to Cave Creek, but out in Desert Hills, it's the Desert Hills customers, and then the total on this page, the green line is actually the total of the cap water deliveries and the well water deliveries. So there was a little anomaly there, you'll see July and August, and we believe that started back in June when there was a difference in billing period that hit the system. So we had that's actually something we're hoping to correct more so on the Cave Creek side with the meter replacement program, where we had a long month followed by a short month in our billing cycle. So when we can get to an automated metering system, that'll be more automatic, and we can actually stay closer to the actual calendar month in our billing. This is something that I've been working on for a number of whiles. We made some progress, but now we went a little bit step backwards. So this the stack bars are actually showing the water that we treat, the cap water that we send into the system, and that's the treated water that leaves the water treatment plant, less the divert water or the reclaimed water. That the reclaimed water is the water as the treatment plant removes material from the raw wastewater. We actually divert that back. Most of it goes back actually as a water supply to the Rancho Manana lakes. That's the little blue on top of it. And we actually have to supplement the lakes with raw cap water at certain times of the year, which is the red on the graph. And then, but what we're showing here is a metering. So there's been a metering issue at the plant for a number of years. Last year, we found a couple of issues that we were able to correct. One was actually simply a programming issue with how one of the meters had been programmed in the past to balance out. We still believe we have an issue with the meter at the cap pipeline at the cap. It's actually, we think it's underreporting a little bit. It actually helps us a little bit because it gives them a little more water to recharge. But we will have to correct that. We have to take the cap pipeline down to do that work. And I'm very nervous about doing until we have the City of Phoenix interconnect up and we can actually shut that site down for more than a few days at a time, because that's what it's going to take to actually cut into that 16-inch pipe and then cut in what we believe is a magnetic flow meter down at that site. And because of its location, everything's going to be at least a week to 2 weeks of work. So we can do that once the Phoenix interconnect's up and running. But we're trying to continually working on trying to get better metering down there and metering at the top end of the plant site. We've added a couple of meters and again, looking at the programming. But overall, I'm happy with the progress we're making, but I know we're not there, but I do believe it'll take until we can take that pipeline down and actually cut in a proper meter. As well as when we actually complete the Phoenix Interconnect site and we do the relocation of the Cat 4 booster pump station, we'll actually have a new inline meter that we can trust, a new magnetic flow meter at that site. So that'll help our metering overall, the system. This is a graph showing our losses in the system. So we try to quite closely account for when we have to flush our fire hydrants and then when we have water leaks. And you'll see July of last year was a pretty big hit to the system. We had two things hit at the same time. We actually had quarter compliance testing. So we actually had, being a long, hot summer, we actually had surprisingly, we had some of the areas of the town where the demands are not high. We have large pipelines. We had to do a lot of flushing to keep the system in compliance. So that's one of the oddities of our system, that we have such large pipelines in some cases and little water use at the top end of some of our higher pressure zones that we have to flush it out to keep the water in compliance. We're looking at other alternatives that we can do, some directional flushing, some in-pipe cleanings that we can do to maybe help reduce that. But long term, I don't know how to get away from that. And then last year, we also had the 6-inch line that crosses Cave Creek Wash broke, and we anticipate, or we attribute about 4 million gallons of loss to that. We had a similar loss on that pipe about 3 years ago. So in this year's capital program, we actually have a project to repair that line. It's very deep and it crosses the wash. We have two buried crossings of Cave Creek Wash, this 6-inch line and an 8-inch line. The 8-inch line has not had the issues crossing the wash. It's actually typically on the western slope where it's actually in a caliche trench where we see the breaks out there and it's more easily noticeable. This one is very challenging for us to see. So hopefully we can get the repair done this year so we can get rid of these losses, because when it leaks, the pipe is actually about 15 feet deep in parts, and we don't see it for months until it actually daylights. So it's difficult for us. This is an issue for us.
I've got a question on the hydrant flushing. Where we do the hydrant flushing, would it be possible to maybe make some French drains at those locations to at least try to recharge some into the aquifer?
We typically, we're actually looking at a couple of hydrants we've used are actually in people's, mayor council are in people's driveways. We're actually trying to look at different locations. We can recharge, that actually goes back into the wash. We could probably do French drains to bring it down quicker. But in effect, we can't get it permitted as a recharge. We couldn't get credit for it. We just have to flush it out, but
About the
just getting it into the ground
Just
quicker.
get it into the groundwater, because I've been looking at the ADWR site and I've noticed that wells north of Cave Creek have dropped anywhere between 20 and 60 feet over the last 5 to 10 years. So
Okay.
we need to start thinking about how we can save whatever water we can and put it back into the groundwater.
Okay, something we can look into. Yeah, again, we will have to continue to flush the system to make it, to keep it in compliance, which is, it's an anomaly when we're in the desert, but just the makeup of our system. And we're trying to look at ways we can improve that. And if we can do some things like recharging near the flushing locations, that could help also.
I have a question of
Yep.
Councilmember Rhodes. Where specifically are those wells that are dropping at that level?
So if you go onto the ADWR website,
Yeah.
they have blue dots and
Right.
red dots. If you go into the blue dots, they're typically have about 10 years. If there's a little pop-up window that comes up, and on that pop-up window, if you put history or histograph, it'll actually show you the well's water levels going down over time.
Okay, and those
Or-
dots show the specific area, but not the specific wells? Is
It
that
doesn't
fair?
show specific wells, it shows a specific area,
Okay,
and it's actually quite fascinating.
and that would be at the north part of town?
Yeah, there's one that's Schoolhouse and Fleming that they
Mhm.
take an annual survey. There's a couple more north of town, one of their east of there, one west of there.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, switching from the water side to the wastewater side, our water ranch trends, and this is showing 3 years plus this year's of trends at our wastewater treatment plant, and they've been fairly stable and static. So nothing really to report there. Again, the master plan is actually showing something similar. We don't see a significant amount of growth in our wastewater side. These are the deliveries overall. So when we start talking about deliveries to Rancho Mañana, our main deliveries up to Rancho Mañana is actually the treated effluent from the wastewater treatment plant to Water Ranch. So that is showing us the orange in the bottom of the stack graphs, and then we also send them reclaimed in what we refer to as cap divert water. Cap divert is the Paul membranes. Currently, the way the CAP pipeline works is it's not optimal for the Paul trailers, so we actually have a divert line where we send the water to the backwash pit, which then gets mixed with the reclaimed water from the Westech filters, and that is sent up as a water supply to the Rancho Mañana Golf Course. And there's certain times of months, like right now, where the lake level is dropping because they're using more water than we can deliver to them by these other two means. So we actually send them raw cap water, and that's the blue on top of the stack graph. And you'll see the green line is an indication of what we actually can bill over the last calendar year to them. And you can see some big drops, like in September. I believe we had some rainstorms up there, so they stopped irrigating in September, but we still are sending the deliveries. Well, you see the raw cap water on top of that graph. It actually the first, I think, 2 weeks in that month, it was actually we were delivering raw cap water, but then it started to rain. So it can happen very quickly. More typically, it's in the winter that we see. And this is actually something in the master plan, when we bring that forward, you'll see is, I think it's one of the places where the town can look at conserving water resources, is working with Rancho Mañana Golf Course on the delivery mechanism up there, and where else we can put our effluent when they don't need it. And then we can look at things like bringing the backwash water down to the treatment plant if we can find another outfall or some beneficial use, and treating it down to Water Ranch. So, and this is a summary of just the losses overall. We account for the pond evaporation, we actually calculate that based on, I think I mention this every time, is there's a evaporation pan that Maricopa County manages up at Lake Pleasant. So we think it's very similar. So based on the surface area of the lakes, and actually we calculate, we have a couple of different calculations, them full and them down lower. So we flip that back and forth depending on how the lakes are operating that month. So we come up with pretty good evaporation. There's some leakage going on. There's also evaporation, but most of it's the overflow. And that's something that if the town could get a management on that, we can get some water resources back into our system. So our backflow program is one of our regulatory programs that we manage. So that's the different backflow devices that help protect the water system. Something that's come up in the last few weeks, actually, we've been looking and working with the building and planning departments. We're finding that we don't have a good inventory of the commercial fire sprinklers in town. In a lot of cases, the fire sprinklers have a backflow device that should be part of the backflow program. So we're actually going to be working with those other two groups to go out and complete the inventory. It also has an impact on utilities because in some cases, we're not sure how those fire lines are tied into our system or the valves have been hidden. So it allows us to go through the town core and look at all our commercial properties and make sure that we have all that mapped out properly. As we've had staff changeovers, one of the things we found is that our mapping was a little off through the town core. So that we had what people thought or what we had marked on the maps as inline valves were actually sprinkler isolation valves. So we had to correct all that. So we just got to start at the east side and work our way to the west side and get that all corrected for everybody. And then that'll help us both get the backflow devices that are actually part of the sprinkler systems to make sure our mapping is corrected. So it's something we're working on. The pretreatment program, this is our monitoring of the program. The pretreatment is actually keeping stuff out of the wastewater system that could be detrimental to the wastewater lines and or the treatment plant itself. So we've changed over to a Swift Comply tracking system. We're very happy with it. It's a system that we manage and set up through the vendor, and then the people the people doing the maintenance actually submit the information, so we can track very closely the compliance of what's going on here. So this is an example of some of the graphs that we see on here. Two other things that I didn't have time to make slides on, and I apologize for that. I just want to bring to council's attention is we have two other big regulatory compliance issues going on right now. One is the lead service line inventory. It's actually something that we're required to do, and by October 16th, we actually have to have an inventory at the state level done. It's actually a federal mandate, and it's being pushed down through Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. It's really all service lines before 1979, and it's both customer side service lines, which would be from the main to the meter, and actually our town service lines would be from the main to the meter, and customer side service lines, which are from the main or at the meter to within 18 inches of building envelope, is what's being required for us to report on. And they're trying to establish whether there would be lead solder in those service lines. So we're working, it's a statewide inventory going right now. ADEQ actually has a couple of consultants that's helping map this out. We've been looking at it from a historical perspective of trying to map out when the lines were placed in, whether they're before or after 1979. Between the two water companies, we have identified a few areas that we do believe we could have it either the customer side or the town side of the service line might need to get further investigation. So we're working on that. What that requires within 1 to 3 years after that inventory is done, then the town will need to start doing replacements of that and or doing, right now we'd be required to actually install filter devices for those homeowners. So that's something we're looking into very quickly. And then it's a 10-year time frame that it all has to be mitigated. So it's right now it's a mandated but unfunded program that we're working on. And our jurisdiction is actually not as bad as a lot of others I've seen in the Valley as far as what the impacts may be, but we'll continue to educate or bring that forward to council as we complete our inventory with the state's consultant and identify what areas we're concerned about. The last one is, you might have heard in the news, it's PFAS, referred to as forever chemicals. So that's a new regulatory group of constituents that are being mandated for us to look at. It's actually the forever chemicals get into the groundwater table and then can get into the drinking water system. So the EPA started in January putting out the standards for the chemicals they want us to look at. I believe there's 12 regulated chemicals, but they're actually looking at 120 in total. So they're actually, EPA is working with ADEQ, but largely through the EPA, and actually having us do water sampling that we're sending back information directly to the EPA labs where they're collecting data and they're moving forward with it. From what we've seen, we haven't seen anything except lithium was something that currently is unregulated that came up in one of our wells in Desert Hills. So we're not sure what the MCL is going to be, which is the maximum contaminant level, but that's actually something that's been identified. So those are two big things that we're working on: the lead service line inventory and the PFAS and the impacts of that to our water systems. But both of them don't seem to be that bad. Lead service lines, again, will be done by October. And then the PFAS, and we're just waiting for the federal regulations to come forward. We're going to kind of clean up the slide, but this is our water resources update. We'll make where like last year is when we actually had we lost or the transfer of the municipal and industrial waters occurred to Carefree. So right now our magic number, it used to be 2606. As easy one to remember now, it's 2228 acre feet of municipal and industrial water the town has. And we have 386 acre feet of non-DD agricultural water for Desert Hills. For the last 2 years, though, we've had a 25% reduction in the non-DD agricultural water. So we're trying to manage this. This is something that as we wrap up the utility master plan, we'll bring that forward to you as far as recommendations. It's something we look at very closely as staff. On this slide doesn't really reflect everything that's going on. The biggest takeaway would be the second to last bullet point where as of the time we wrote this slide, or as of last calendar year, we had 1,776 acre feet of municipal industrial water stored in the Cap Hieroglyphic Mountains Recharge Facility. So it's about a year's worth of our water allocation we need to provide for our customers. So it's a great thing that we've been able to start that. And we're going to continue to work on that as we move forward. And then as I bring forward the master plan, as we complete that, which is, I'm seeing the final draft this week. So in the next few months, we'll bring that forward to council. You can see all of it and I'll map out. I know there's a lot of concerns about what are we doing for water resources. There are some big things happening. The reallocation of the Colorado River that might occur in 2026 and what the impacts to the town that might be. Council might recall the workshop that we did with you last year. The master plan wraps that all together. So we'll bring that forward with the recommendations that we think are the best for the town to move forward with.
Just a clarification, Sean, that's
Yep.
the end of 26.
Right.
And any kind of reductions may happen. Probably 27 will be on.
Yeah, when they actually come into effect. Yes, you're correct, Councilmember. One thing that's actually came out of the master plan is something we've been talking about for a number of years is the town, well, we have 3 active wells in Desert Hills. When the town bought the water company, there was a number of active wells in the Cave Creek system that had been used over various time periods or of non-use. So we actually did a paper study to look at all the different wells that we had on our books with AD Department of Water Resources. We identified 6 wells that are worth further evaluation. The criteria were where they were located. Do we think we could tie them into the existing? Because there used to be a well line system in the town core. So that largely still exists. So next week, we're actually going to be testing what's referred to as the Right 1 well. There used to be a Right 1 and a Right 2 well at the water treatment plant site. The Right 2 well is actually underneath the expansion of the West Tech filter number 4. So that actually was fully abandoned in 2008. So the Right 1 well is there physically just right behind the site wall, right by the site trailer. So we're going to clean that and then do a pump test. We're going to do that over a 24-hour period, actually pump that well to the wash. It happens to be this drain right in front of the treatment plant that we can drain into a wash and test for both water volume and water quality so we can understand what's going on. The next year, we're going to reallocate some capital funds and continue doing some of the other well casings in town. A few of the well casings, as we looked at them, of the 6 that we initially thought we were going to look for further evaluation, 2 of them are actually only 80 feet deep. So I'm not sure how much evaluation we want to do on those ones. So it'd probably be more like 4 wells in total that we'll look at, including we have to make a decision on what we want to do with the Vermeesh well. The Vermeesh well is the one in Desert Wilderness Park, and that was the last well we functionally used in town. It actually had pretty good production, but then the well casing looks like it's disintegrated. And I know the town spent some money trying to rehab that well casing. We're not sure if it's viable anymore, so it might require a re-drill. So we might get a more accurate cost of what that might take to re-drill that well and then bring it back online. So it's located right in Galloway Wash, so it actually seems to be a good production well. So if we could bring it back into functional use, and the wells would really help us manage our deliveries to Rancho Mignon Golf Course. As we bring the City of Phoenix water to the system, as we start to optimize the deliveries to the water treatment plant, we'll be producing less and less backwash water. So we will have less of that water supply to send to Rancho Mignon when they need it. So if we can bring the well waters in, that helps us balance it. And then potentially we could use it as a water supply backup. That's actually how the old water company used to run the wells, is that they brought the pipeline system together to the water treatment plant for treatment. Initially for chlorination, and then they actually try to do some arsenic treatment in it. So it's worth us looking at again to help for the protect the town's water resources and our ability to provide wet water to our customers. Quick update on the Carefree. So in this last quarter, the last 4 commercial accounts at Carefree Highway and Cave Creek Road were Lowe's, StoreQuest, and CVS. I don't know why I listed 4. It's actually, there's only 3 down there, but they had 4. There's 4 water meters installed. They did the disconnect for that. So the Carefree was bringing their new reservoir on Tom Darlington Drive. So now they're able to provide largely the fire protection for Lowe's is really what was driving that. So right now there's still 23 accounts in the area B there circled in black that are still connected to our system that we're providing water service to until Carefree does a booster station upgrade. So we anticipate, they said they were going to be bidding that project. I anticipate probably about a year, but there's only 23 customers currently we're still serving. And I do anticipate that probably be a year before it's fully off our system. So the distribution group has been busy. This is sort of a table we give you every quarter to show what's going on. One thing you'll see at the top there is the blue stakes. So that's when we get requests to do markings. There's been a lot of activity, a lot of contractors doing directional bores and other such things, and a lot of development. And because our CAP pipeline extends down Carefree, Cave Creek Road, we actually get all those blue stake requests to come in. So it's important that we do that and make sure that our lines are properly marked so people don't damage them. Service orders when we have a request to talk to a customer about something. So again, we're pretty proactive on trying to be talk to our customers about issues that they may see. You'll see new meters. We only installed 2 new meters in Cave Creek and 0 in Desert Hills. Meter replacements has gone up in Cave Creek. While we're wrapping up, and the next slide, we'll be talking about the meter replacement program. The meters in Cave Creek, especially the Itron ERTs, are failing quicker than we keep up with them. So before we get the entire program wrapped off, staff have been trying to keep up with getting some of the old meters out of the system. 7 large main repairs in Cave Creek. We've been doing will serves more so than setting new meters, where people have come in and requested for service, and we actually have to do the site visitations, make sure that is there a service meter. Sometimes we have inconsistent data whether there was an existing meter at the property. So, and the distribution group has been very busy. A question the mayor usually asks me, and he hasn't asked yet, so I'm going to be proactive about it, is our fire hydrants. Next week, we actually start with our contractor. We've been using Hydro Contracting for this will be the 4th year now to do the manual inspection and maintenance of our fire hydrants. So it usually takes them 2 to 3 weeks to get through the entire system, and they're doing both systems starting next Monday. So I'll be able to report that in the next report. A distribution system, these next couple of slides just show some repairs we did. Our staff actually worked proactively with the planning staff and facility staff. We actually relocated a fire hydrant up by the rodeo grounds. We moved it back so that they could actually move the fence back to make better access. This shows where we work together, I think, very well within the different work groups. This is just another example of one of the mains. We said there were 7 main repairs as an example where the line had split. It was a thin wall plastic PVC line on Carefree Highway just by the water ranch that actually split on the top. So we actually had to replace about a 7-foot section of it. This is an example of why I mentioned we need to start spending some more time in the town core doing some mapping. So we had a contractor working by the Circle K by Basin Road right by the water reclamation plant. And while they were working, a service line for another meter broke. Typically you'd go in and you're able to turn the corpse off, but this was actually a corpse off into the asbestos cement pipe. So it actually broke off at the service tap. So the corp shaft broke off. So we couldn't isolate the line. You typically just turn the corp shaft. So we were working in the town core. It took us about 4 hours to try and figure out that we couldn't figure out how to turn this pipe off. So we actually brought in a vendor to cut in what's called an Insta valve into the pipe to allow us to get the service done. Following this, the staff went out and we actually found 3 other valves that had been buried about 3 inches deep. So it's not our current public works crew. This is dating back to previous generations of public works staff and also the water company had not brought valves up to grade. So, and we also found an interconnect on Linda Drive between the 8-inch line and our 12-inch line that goes to the Linda site that no one even knew about. So, kudos to the staff for sticking this one out. It went through, I'll be honest, it sucks that we had to cut this valve in, but it also forced us to go through the mapping of the system, and we found some valves that we didn't know about, and even old staff members that we reached out to had no idea about these things and how they were working. So our staff are learning more about the system, but it's been painful to learn this.
One leak at a time.
Yeah, so we're trying to be proactive, but with the limited resources we have, it's hard. The wastewater group's also been busy. We actually had some work at Rancho Manana. It seems like that's the site that keeps giving back to us, but we had a problem with the check valve. So we replaced one of the check valves out there and actually an isolation valve. We also did some work in this last quarter on the air relief valves on the 8-inch effluent line that comes up from the wastewater treatment plant and the 8-inch force main going down. So this is an example that we bring an outside contractor in to help us do this. So staff supplemental, it seems to work out very well for us. The NERI pump, Council might recall that we actually got authority probably about 4 or 5 months ago to actually replace one of the NERI pumps, or to rebuild one of the NERI pumps. Let me say rebuild. So these, all the water from the town's water treatment plant has to go through the NERI site. There's 3 booster pumps at that site. They've all 3 of them been in operation since 2008. 2 years ago, we got the first one out. It was in pretty bad shape. And then we wanted to proactively get through because the staffing resources we didn't do last year. So we got the second one out this year. We'll come back to you in the fall and get the third one out. So it's back in service. We had to rebuild all the bowls on it. It was not a complete replacement, which was $70,000. It was more $40,000 rebuilding the pump and putting it back into service. But yeah, these are really the heart of the system at this point. We have 3 pumps at that site, and we've gone through 2 of them. We've actually rebuilt all 3 motors now, but we have to get the 3rd pump out. So we'll be coming back to council in the fall to get approval to do that. We anticipate that might be, again, the $40,000 to $70,000 range to get that done.
Did you say the bowls were worn?
Yeah, all
So
the
it was
impellers.
just, friction?
Combination of things. We think there's a little cavitation going on there because the way the system works, it's hard for the staff. The system itself works largely in manual. We haven't figured out a way to automate it, largely because we have to send water up to the Rockaway Reservoir through Carroll Heights. So it's hard to manage actually some of that. So I think there's might be a couple of issues going on. It's also wear and tear on the bearings and everything too. But the impellers needed to, they wanted the
The
impellers
same
bolts.
bearings are in there for all those years?
Yeah, since 2000.
That is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, our maintenance staff, we got a crew that we do a lot of our own in-house maintenance. Again, larger stuff we have to bring out and we contract where necessary. But our Carriage 1 booster station, our staff were able to go out and replace one of the pumps and motors out there. So we try to be proactive with that. These are the group that actually keeps up with most of our remote facilities. So it's a good use of our resources and a good use of the town's funds. I got alluded to earlier about the meter replacement program. So the town has obtained a WaterSmart grant. It's funding, I think it's 45 or 46%. There's a calculation why we went that way, but about $500,000 is the grant, or $500,000 is the grant. We're contributing 54% of the funds on top of that. And that's going to allow us to replace all of the meters in Cave Creek. Because the grant's taken so long, we've actually gone and we've actually have about 500 to 600 of the meters we've had to replace because of failures in the year and a half since we got the grant award, and between now and getting the actual documentation saying we can spend it. So that's been used up existing capital funds, but now we're at the tail end of this that we can finish off, there's about 1,800 meters still to change out in the system. And this will allow us to also do the improvement from a drive-by, what we refer to as an AMR system, but it's really a drive-by system where we have to send someone out once a month with a truck to pick up the signals, to actually setting base station collectors and actually changing to an AMI, advanced metering infrastructure, where we actually will get almost real-time data from the customers. So between the collector sites and actually having to put some cellular enabled meters out in the system that report up to the cloud, we'll actually get all the information to the cloud, and we'll get better real-time data about customer usage, leaks going on in the system, things that are happening in the system. So make a huge improvement. So again, we received the grant. I'm still waiting for the authorization. We've made a purchase. If you've been down to Water Ranch, you'll see 3 large connexes down there. One of them is filled with 800 water meters right now. We're expecting the rest of the delivery to come. We're working through the details when we come back to council for award for a contractor to help us put them in, because there is a federal grant involved that has to meet the Davis-Bacon prevailing wage rules. We're trying to find a contract to allow us to do that. So federal money's never free, but it's still nice that we have it. So I'll give, and we're looking 6 to 9 months. We should be out of the drive-by system in Cave Creek and into an AMI system with new meters. We anticipate, I think we're going to get a 3 to 5% just savings just in reporting of water, because that's how much I think our current meters are under reporting. So that'd be good savings for the town. Obviously the largest project is the new interconnect site with the city of Phoenix. And I apologize, I'll get better photos. These are ones I quickly grabbed for the presentation. So back in February, we had an open house to discuss the project with the neighbors before it kicked off. Black & Veatch has completed the design and obtained the permits for the project. In the end of March, council awarded the guarantee maximum price number 2 to MGC Constructions contractors for the bulk of the work. So in April and May, they mobilized the site and they've done the excavation. If you've been by it recently, you'll see the big hole at the back of the site. That's actually for the reservoir. So they're starting to pour the base slab for the reservoir, and they'll start doing some yard piping out there. So things are moving along. And sadly, also in May, Phoenix though started their work on the 16-inch pipeline south of town. So I know that has affected traffic greatly south of town, but I'd look in the positive. That's going to be a water delivery pipeline for the town is what they're putting in.
It's huge.
They're bringing a 24-inch out to the road, and then it's going to be a 16 north and south, I believe.
I saw the 24-inch pipe.
Yeah.
I thought, wow.
No, that's what's coming out of the booster station. That's the top size of what's coming out of the booster station. Then it converts into a 16 going north and south. So, and in lieu of answering for questions, I've been asked to do one public service announcement. So we are still looking for people to apply for the Utility Advisory Committee. This is the change from the previous Water Advisory Committee. So June 19th, we've asked people, anybody's interested in trying to be actively involved in the town's water resources. And we're really trying to focus the Utility Advisory Committee. It's both water and wastewater, but it's really focused on water resources and conservation. And we're asking for people by June 19th, if you can apply. It's on our website. You can talk to Teresa, and we'll get some, hopefully get some people who can it's been a while since we've actually had one of those meetings, but we'd like to get that regoing. And especially now that we're wrapping up our master plans, this is a great time for us to lead into helping our citizens help us conserve our water resources moving forward and look at ways that we can be proactive about conservation for the town.
I would ask council, anyone knows anybody that would like to get started in contributing to the town. It's a great farm system along the planning commission for moving up the ranks. And so
Have you all sent out anything on the alert system saying, hey, we're looking for this?
Yes. And yes, Councilmember Rhodes, we've done that in, I believe, both social media, and we've had advertisements as well in the Sonoran newspaper. So what's that? Yeah, we'll definitely do it. And we're going to reevaluate. We may, if we don't meet our benchmark to have this filled to take to the council by July, we may just kind of take a break during the summertime and re-up this in the fall when there's more people around.
okay, thank you very much.
I have a question. How do you determine with your dead end lines when you have to bleed the water out? Parks the water in.
We actually have a couple of
Testing.
sampling stations in the northern area of the town, and we know there's a couple of lines where we have modeling that shows that we have dead end. There's the large line up Spur Cross Road, it's a 12-inch line, which is way oversized for that. And in our pressure zone 8, we have an area that we have a compliance sampling point that we actually proactively, before the compliance sampling is done on a quarterly basis, a few weeks before, we actually do some representative sampling so we can see the water quality, and we've over historical knowledge, we know what's going to happen up there. So if the chlorine residual, the water's hot, we'll start seeing some issues, especially with our compliance. We don't want to not be non-compliant, so we have to start proactively flushing. We're actually also looking to reintroduce some auto flushers and then flush to some washes, and so it's not in front of people using on hydrants and stuff. But yeah, it's a challenge to manage our system. We got some larger lines up in the northern area where we don't have that many customers drawing the water off of it. So
Thank you.
Sean, thank you. And as usual, nice job. I think the water company has come light years in a very short time. So, and a lot of that's something due to your leadership. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that, but a lot of it's due to staff. I'm just the person sitting here. It's the staff behind the scenes.
We've
that
always
do the
thought
work.
of you as the pretty face of the department.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Okay, now we have the STR report.
Yeah, just to clarify, that's STR, not the other ST.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Presentation of status of the short-term rental program predicted by Deputy Town Manager, Town Clerk. Discussion only.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'll wait for the PowerPoint to go up. All right. So the ordinance 2023-02 regarding the short-term rentals went into effect November of last year. Since that time, we have brought on as our registration service provider, Avenue Insights and Analytics. Their annual fee is just over $11,000. They provide us targeted web monitoring, with weekly data collection, and they're looking at various short-term rental websites as well as search engines. They also, when they do those scrapes, they reach out to those properties they identify and notify them of our town requirements. Avenue also will host or does host our 24/7 complaint hotline. They field the complaints with live staff 24/7. They field those complaints and violations from residents, and then they reach out to town staff for escalation purposes and follow-up. They are also providing our online registration licensing portal, which officially went live end of February. Initially in November, we started with the paper system, and now we're online. All our short-term rental requirements are actually on our website. There's a couple ways to get to them, but the shortcut is up on the website here. We do list out on the website all the requirements, including state and county. And then as they scroll down, there are additional links with what our town requirements are. We do require a town business license as well as the short-term rental registration, which is an annual registration and it's $250 for that. On this website as well, is the short-term rental complaint reporting hotline. We also have an online form that people can report if they have issues. As of the end of May, we have 39 accounts registered. We have 52 that have been identified and contacted. Of those, many of those, we've had a few report back that they are selling their properties, so they aren't going to be reporting. Some of those will report back that they are actually doing long-term rentals as opposed to short-term rentals, and then we'll continue to follow up with the others. We do have additional 10 that reached out to us and are closed. And then to date, our registration fees are collected, that's that $250 annual registration fee, $9,750. Our tax collection, which is covered there a little bit, or on my screen, I should say, is just over $100,000, and that's from November to April that we've collected. And as far as complaints go, we have received a total of 6 complaints. 3 of those have been outside of our town boundaries. 3 of them have been to the same location, and 1 complaint is pending resolution. All right. That's all I have. Do you have a question? Try to keep it short and
Questions-
simple.
Questions or discussions from
So
council?
overall, it looks like it's working.
So far, it seems like it's working. So we are working to identify and the accounts that are identified, some people will post for a month or 2, and then they might take their post down. So that those numbers will vary.
Do you have any concept of whether the tax collection has gone up from before last November?
I believe it has gone up. It hasn't, I think it's gone up around $5,000 maybe
Oh,
total, but
Not
yeah,
much.
not a ton. But again, those are unaudited numbers too, so.
I think I see that half of the complaints are coming from one particular house. Why?
Noise related specifically.
Is this a house where they have a larger number of people? What?
It's also the proximity and to the neighbors. It's set higher than maybe some of the other neighbors, so the noise does carry
Okay, near Rancho Manana.
in that vicinity.
More questions? So I guess the process is working. We hadn't
I
had
think so.
any disasters or big blow-ups so far.
So far. Yes.
So good. And it's coming in, the $10,000, $11,000 fees are, 20% of the 50,000 we thought they would be when the program was put in place. We couldn't hire an employee to do this for $11,000. So it
Correct.
seems like it's extremely economical way to handle this process.
And now that we've got the online portal set up, it's going to be a little bit less burdensome on the administrative side, or should be.
Okay. Thank you, Teresa. Well done.
Absolutely.
Mayor and council, we'll come back each year, just give you a report like this. We'll also, by that time, we'll have normalized the next time we do this next year. It's very obvious that we're getting tremendous value from Avenue. We've been very pleased with how it's been working. And in fact, they will do a direct contact of either Marshall, Stein, or MCSO, depending on what the issue is. So I think we're very pleased, and also the fact that people do have a number they feel like they can call 24/7 to report, which we don't have the ability to do that ourselves. So it's very helpful for us. So anyways, I think this is really going the way that the council planned originally when they adopted the ordinance back in November of last year.
Thank you. That completes our agenda. Meeting adjourned.